A couple of things happened which prompted me to come up with a proposal. First of all, TVNZ has lobbied to shuck off its public service obligation. The government's agreed with that. Secondly, TVNZ 7 has been advised that it will not be funded after June, July next year, and 6 has already gone. Thirdly, there's a boom in technology which enables us to deliver signals in different ways. Fourthly, in order for a public service broadcaster to really be of any import in the country, it must have a news business, it must have a gathering service, it must have good analysis, it must provide a forum in which debate, dissent, discussion, diversity all have a place. And when I looked around, to me, Radio New Zealand had the building blocks for all of this. And so what I put forward was a proposal that we set up something called national television, which has as its cornerstone Radio New Zealand. It broadcasts 18 hours a day. This is national television. About 12 hours of that would come out of the studio. That would be programs like Morning Report, like 9 to Noon, like The Panel, like Rural Report, like the Pacifica program. These programs would come straight out of the studio, and for less than $1 million in capital cost, you can link Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, and you can give every single Radio New Zealand reporter an iPad and an iPod, so that they can actually broadcast in and put pictures on as they're giving their reports. You would have a crawler along the bottom of the screen in which you'd encourage people to participate in the same way as you've got here with Twitter and email. You'd be running stock reports, you'd be running news and weather headlines as programs went to air. Our view was that organically, very quickly, the staff would work out that a picture of somebody with headphones on talking for 3 hours was not necessarily what you wanted to do, but very quickly they'd work out how you could put up visual images. You could link the people that you're talking to, you can FaceTime people. For the hours that you weren't in the studio, and for example, things like book reviews, book readings rather, you'd have a bank of programs. You'd have at least an hour and a half of television. About 12 hours of that would come out of the studio. That would be programs like Morning Report, like 9 to Noon, like The Panel, like Rural Report, like the Pacifica program. These programs would come straight out of the studio, and for less than $1 million in capital cost, you can link Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, and you can give every single Radio New Zealand reporter an iPad and an iPod, so that they can actually broadcast in and put pictures on as they're giving their reports. You would have a crawler along the bottom of the screen in which you'd encourage people to participate in the same way as you've got here with Twitter and email. You'd be running stock reports, you'd be running news and weather headlines as programs went to air. Our view was that organically, very quickly, the staff would work out that a picture of somebody with headphones on talking for 3 hours was not necessarily what you wanted to do, but very quickly they'd work out how you could put up visual images. You could link the people that you're talking to, you can FaceTime people. For the hours that you weren't in the studio, and for example, things like book reviews, book readings rather, you'd have a bank of programs. You'd have at least an hour and a half a day of New Zealand programs, which would be the kinds of things that you currently see on 7. Backbenchers, Media Watch, Court Report, Media 7, sorry, and Media Watch. And those programs would continue to be made. They'd be on rotate, just as they are on 7. And for about another 3 or 4 hours a day, you'd have access to a vast wealth of very accessible programming from PBS, from BBC, from Russian television, from Al Jazeera, which would be part documentary and part news. Now, your schedules are set up far enough in advance to manage all this and to ensure that you've always got something that's going to air. But there's actually quite some interesting. There's a dynamic about watching people make news. Nobody's going to watch this program or this channel 18 hours a day. They're going to dip in and out of it. But at its core would be the current affairs and the news and as I say, the debate and discussion that we currently have. I think that it would invigorate Radio New Zealand. Currently, the government has, not as a matter of policy, but covertly rather than overtly, nobody from government appears on Radio New Zealand anymore because they don't think that that's where there's an audience. If there were pictures up, they'd appear. And, as David says, one feeds off the other. I think that you can start with a block of 6 hours in the morning. You can start with 18 hours. Actually, we put a whole program together in which we see that the cost of running this is about the third of a cost of running TVNZ 7. And that's a reality that we're facing, because whilst Peter says, yes, I'd pay another cent a day or $1 a day or whatever it is, the truth is that the government's faced with, whichever colour it is faced with increasing demands in every aspect of its life. And right now we're going through a global crisis. And to me, it seemed like one way to get this going, for a cost of about $3 to $4 million a year from the government, and we've also got some other ways of raising the funds which don't involve advertising. This would be commercial free, but we think that we could deliver this channel for something that was almost unnoticeable to a government, and that they would be behind it. I have to say that the Radio New Zealand board is really excited by it. They do see that this is a great possibility for RNZ. It isn't necessarily a new voice on everything, but we think that there'll be new ways and that eventually new voices would emerge. But if we don't do something, then we'll have nothing.
Can I just understand the concept a little better? I'm imagining 9 to noon, say,
yep.
Which I know well for about 10 minutes every Tuesday. So Catherine Ryan's sitting there in the Wellington studio.
Yep.
She looks lovely, but the studio doesn't.
Yep.
It's very poorly lit. It's a mess of microphones and headphones, yep, and all sorts of other things. So that's what you'd be showing.
Doesn't matter what we're watching, because you can put 3 cameras in that studio. Yeah. You have a mixing, somebody who's doing presentation and production. You're in Auckland.
Yeah.
They're linking the two of you. The shots like this. Anybody who saw David Beatson on Kiwi FM over the last week will have seen the kind of shot that's there. You don't have to go and paint the studio, and I know that Radio New Zealand management thinks, well, exactly that. Our studios look downtrodden. What does it matter? How can we make that attractive? What people are interested in is content. I mean, this morning I listened to Catherine interview somebody from the UK on some of the reasons behind the rioting, and what the interviewer was saying was absolutely fascinating. Now, we could have had a picture of them. We could have had footage of riots, but we could and let that roll. A week or so ago, Chris Laidlaw interviewed Robert Winston. If you'd had the camera on Winston for the hour,
oh, yeah,
it would have been absolutely engrossing, and you can still listen to it.
If you can listen. I mean, right. What do you need that face for when it's the ideas that you can mow the lawn, do the dishes, drive your car, and listen? Where's the plus?
One of the things you can do, if you actually record the material, is you can time shift it, so that you actually get an opportunity. No, I'm sorry. You can say what you like about. You can listen to the radio while you're in the shower and all the rest of it. The fact of the matter is, you may actually want to do it in the evening while you're sitting in your chair and watching.
Yeah.
Well, fine. But why not watch it? I don't see why you want to actually shut down an opportunity rather than create one.
It's not a shutdown. It's
saying television
should be television. It shouldn't be.
But these things aren't on television at the moment, and they can be. And for example, you can engage the educational community on television in a way that you'll never do on radio. A teacher's not going to be able to say to the classroom, righto, everybody shut up and listen to this for the next 15 minutes.
But that already exists as a service into every classroom through educational TV.
But they don't, because it's not being televised.
No, but it is. It's available online through ETV.
If you want examples of how this can work, the guy that interviewed David this week, Glenn Williams at Kiwi FM, is way ahead of everyone else.
Yeah.
I would employ him.
Absolutely.
If this comes to pass, I would employ that guy.
Yeah, where is he? Oh, there you go.
Yeah. I think Sam, he's behind you.
Finish the thought and we'll go.
Yes. That was my thought. I think Peter should talk now.
Tell us what you're up to.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could just put words in John's mouth, if he doesn't mind, I think what he's saying is that that you can do, like, we can't afford this TV, a TV channel with a full production, a high cost TV channel. So what we're looking at, I guess, is something that can be created with very little money on top of what is already being done. So basically, it's value added. And answering the question about why would you want to watch Winston for an hour? Well, you'd make sure that the content was value added on top of the audio. So you'd have videos and images of what Winston was actually talking about. You'd make the shot dynamic. It would always be changing a little bit. But it's just, essentially it is just taking what is already there, and for very little money on top, making something a little bit bigger, and at least putting this channel on air, which may evolve into something further down the track.
Now, what you're doing at the moment is basically just putting a webcam on interviewees. Yeah, so
it's a basic sort of rudimentary setup at the moment, but it's a 3-cam setup in the studio, Skype video calls coming in, so a lot of my guests can be around the world and they're sitting in front of their camera. An example would be, say, a film review where we can have the trailer running as we're talking about it. Basically, it's breakfast TV, but in a more simplified sort of way. Very suited to talk radio, not so much suited to music radio. But in saying that, one of my ideas was you could create a music TV station based on a radio station where you play the music videos that also go out on FM and out on this video stream as well. But that's, I guess, an idea to the side. But for very little cost, the production values could be elevated a little bit. It doesn't take much to light a studio a little better, put a pretty banner in the background or a nice bookcase. It doesn't take much at all. Yeah.
Right. Yes, Andrew.